The Smiley Face Killer. 11 different states, 45 deaths, all connected to a group of killers, or is it all a case of tragic drownings? The eerie smiley face killer theory has been a thing of myth by some for over 20 years. However, basically the same MO seems to be connected with most of the victims. This particular killer or killers picks highly intelligent, athletic, and mainly college students. The victims all carry another very common characteristic as well: they all have been partying or drinking at a get-together before they wind up missing. And all of them have been declared to have accidentally drowned by police. That is until two detectives from NY formed a theory by finding odd out-of-place graffiti of a smiley face not too far from where each of the victims in question were found. One of the detectives claimed to have been on the Smiley Face Killers website. Claiming it's real, "I have seen it, it's not a single killer." They actually claim the website is that of a cult, and it's an entire cult who is the Smiley Face Killers. Today we will unpack all of the details for you to decide: is this nothing more than tragic accidents, or is it an infamous, deeply secret cult of Smiley Face Killers?
Before diving into this further, you are tuning into Coffee with History. If solved, unsolved, heroic, or just plain mysterious is your thing, make sure to join us as we go back in time and discover the past. On this channel we will post about anything we find notable. We are always up for suggestions, just drop them in the comments for a chance to be featured in future videos if we end up covering your subject. Without further ado, this is today's harrowing tale.
The Smiley Face Killers. The Smiley Face Murder Theory, also known as the Smiley Face Murders, Smiley Face Killings, and Smiley Face Gang, is a theory advanced by retired New York City detectives Kevin Gannon and Anthony Duarte, as well as Dr. Lee Gilbertson, a criminal justice professor and gang expert at St. Cloud State University. It alleges that a number of young men found dead in bodies of water across several Midwestern American states from the late 1990s to the 2010s did not accidentally drown, as concluded by law enforcement agencies, but were victims of a serial killer or killers. The term smiley face became connected to the alleged murders when it was made public that the police had discovered graffiti depicting a smiley face near locations where they think the killer dumped the bodies, in at least a dozen of the cases. Gannon wrote a textbook case study on the subject titled Case Studies in Drowning Forensics. The response of law enforcement investigators and other experts have been largely skeptical. As recently as 2017, Gannon and Duarte were examining evidence going back to the late 1990s that they believe connects the deaths of 45 college-age males whose dead bodies were found in water in 11 states, often after leaving parties or bars where they had been drinking. The men, according to the former detectives, often fit a profile of being popular, athletic and successful students, and most were white. Gannon and Duarte have theorized that the young men were all murdered, either by an individual or by an organized group of killers. The term smiley face became connected to the alleged murders when it was made public that Gannon and Duarte had discovered graffiti depicting a smiley face near locations where they think the killer had dumped the bodies in at least a dozen of the cases. Detectives Kevin Gannon and Anthony Duarte say it started with the death of college student Patrick McNeil, who drowned in New York City in 1997. At the time, McNeil's death was ruled accidental due to alcohol intoxication, but Gannon disagreed after his own examination of McNeil's autopsy, crime scene and evidence photos. He promised McNeil's parents, who also doubted official findings, that he would prove their son's death was a homicide. Eventually, Gannon and Duarte were joined by retired NYPD detective Mike Donovan and St. Cloud University sociology professor Dr. Lee Gilbertson, and the team started digging deeper into closed cases, eventually forming the Smiley Face Killers theory. Gannon, Duarte, Donovan and Gilbertson claim an organized group of serial killers would drug unsuspecting victims at a bar or party, then abduct, hold and or torture the victims before finally killing them and dumping the bodies in water. The term smiley face became connected to their theory when the team revealed they discovered graffiti depicting a smiley face near the victims' bodies in the states of Ohio, Pennsylvania, Indiana, Wisconsin, and Iowa. Even though the paint color, size and style of the faces varied, they remained convinced it was a killer's signature, claiming responsibility. In 2008, the team publicly announced their theory during multiple national media interviews. As the team's theory gained attention, Minneapolis police did eventually reclassify one of the accidental drowning cases as a homicide, that of Chris Jenkins in 2020, after statements surfaced made by a convicted felon indicating foul play, though no arrests have yet been made. As for the dozens of other cases that remain closed and labeled accidental drownings, the team claims police don't want to admit they got it wrong. In 2008, journalist Jessica McBride researched and wrote about the Smiley Face Killers theory for Milwaukee Magazine, after hearing it associated with the Jenkins case and later the Matt Kruzicki case in Illinois, which was also determined to be an accidental drowning. She says she was drawn to the case because Matt's father, Bill Kruzicki, is a well-known retired sheriff's marshal. I was curious if he believed these theories, said Jessica. Like the McNeil family, Bill Kruzicki found too many oddities about the circumstances surrounding his son's death, not buying the accidental drowning explanation, and wanted foul play definitively ruled in or out. The police did eventually reclassify the Jenkins case, says Jessica. I would say it gave the investigation a bit more credibility, and makes the theory nevertheless a lot more interesting. One problem the McNeil family has, is how the Smiley Face Killer investigation team remains vague about the information they've obtained. On one hand, they devote all this time and energy to these cases, and seem to care about victims and families, but continue to be frustratingly fuzzy on details, says Jessica. While working on her feature, the McNeil family attempted to interview team members, but the interview wasn't very productive. Bill Kruzicki also stated that the team never attempted to speak with him about Matt's death either, even though Kruzicki is an experienced member of the law enforcement community, and reached out to them on multiple occasions. In 2008, the FBI formally released a statement that their agency has found no connections between any of the cases. To date, we have not developed any evidence to support links between these tragic deaths, or any evidence substantiating the theory that these deaths are the work of a serial killer, or killers. The vast majority of these instances appear to be alcohol-related drownings. More than a dozen of these cases have been outlined in Gannon and Gilbertson's book, Case Studies in Drowning Forensics, but there are 6 deaths in particular that stand out as potential smiley face murders. Number 1. Dakota James. Dakota was 23 years old when he went missing in Pittsburgh, Pennsylvania. On January 25, 2017 around 11:30 p.m. James was walking back to his apartment after a night out drinking with friends and co-workers, in which he would never make it home that night. The last known sighting of the Duquesne University graduate student was caught on a surveillance camera in the downtown area. The footage captured James entering a dark alley, and that was the last time he was seen alive. The following morning, when James did not show up for work, his boss informed his family, who filed a missing persons report 72 hours later. James's parents later hired a private investigator who organized a massive citywide search, which led to the discovery of James's body in the Ohio River on March 6, 2017, 40 days after he had disappeared. The Pittsburgh police theorized James fell into the river while crossing a bridge near the city center and drowned. They believed his body traveled for almost 10 miles and even went through a dam before its discovery. James's body, however, had almost no visible damage, which was highly suspicious because it had traveled through a heavily trafficked river, leaving the police's theory that his body traveled 10 miles down the river highly unlikely. A smiley face was found spray painted on an underpass near where James's body was discovered. Number 2. Tommy Booth, 24, disappeared on January 19, 2008 from a bar in Woodland, Pennsylvania. That night, he had been celebrating a friend's 21st birthday with a group of friends. Surveillance footage captured Booth entering the bar where the celebration took place, but there is no video evidence of him leaving. About 2 weeks after he went missing, Booth's body was found face down in a creek behind the bar. His death was ruled a probable drowning, and there were no signs of trauma. The area had been searched repeatedly in the weeks before his body was discovered, but no one had seen Booth. According to former detective Kevin Gannon and Dr. Lee Gilbertson, when Booth was found, his body was in full rigor mortis, which normally dissipates within 24 to 36 hours after death. This finding is inconsistent with the belief that Booth drowned the night he disappeared. Gannon and Gilbertson also noted the body appeared to have been staged. 3 sticks were strategically placed around his body, and there were shoe and drag marks in the soil. A smiley face was painted on a wall of the bar under a deck. Number 3. Lucas Homan. On September 29, 2006, 21-year-old Lucas Homan vanished from La Crosse, Wisconsin. The day of his disappearance, Homan had been celebrating Oktoberfest with his friends. After a night of bar hopping, Homan headed home at around 10 p.m. with a friend. Homan and his friend somehow got separated during their walk home, and his friend ended up at the ER detox with a head injury after being picked up by police. He told investigators he could not remember anything that happened that night. Homan did not arrive for a golf outing the next day. Search dogs scoured the downtown area where Homan was last seen alive. According to police reports, one dog later hit on an SUV owned by a local band member who had played a show at the bar the night of Homan's disappearance, but the K9 alert was inconclusive. Officials did not implicate the band member in Homan's death. The morning of October 2nd, Homan's body was found not far from the shore of the Mississippi River. His death was ruled an accidental drowning, and the autopsy report noted acute alcohol intoxication was a major contributing factor. According to Gannon and Gilbertson, Homan had various injuries on his head, hands and arms, and they theorized that a mark on his forehead may have been a footprint that was the result of Homan being held down. Homan was the 8th accidental drowning case in La Crosse over a 9-year period. A smiley face was found spray painted near where Homan's body was found. Number 4. Todd Geib. He was 22 years old when he went missing during the early hours of June 12, 2005, at a bonfire party in an orchard close to his home in Casnovia, Michigan. He was reported missing later that day by his mother, and a massive manhunt ensued. The night of his disappearance, Geib made several calls from his cell phone. One of them was to a friend who said she heard Geib say, "I'm in a field," before the call dropped. Geib's body was found 3 weeks later in a lake that had previously been searched. His death was ruled an undetermined drowning. Oddly, Geib's head and shoulders were sticking out of the water as if he had gone for a swim. Geib's remains also had very little signs of decomposition, which would have been present if he had died the day he went missing, 22 days before the recovery of his body. Alcohol and antidepressants were found in Geib's toxicology screen, but it was reported that Geib was not suffering from any form of depression at the time. A smiley face had been spray painted on a tree near where Geib's body was found, and a smiley face sticker was later placed on his gravesite. Number 5. William Hurley. A Navy veteran, 24-year-old William Hurley went missing after leaving a Bruins hockey game in Boston, Massachusetts. On October 8, 2009, Hurley went to the game with 2 friends. Halfway through the game, Hurley called his fiancée, Claire Mahoney, and said he wanted to leave. Hurley walked outside while Mahoney drove to the stadium to pick him up. When she arrived, however, he was nowhere in sight. When Mahoney called Hurley to find out where he was waiting, Mahoney said he answered the phone, and she heard him ask someone where he was located. The man said 99 Nashua Street, and Hurley said his cell phone battery was going dead. Mahoney drove to the address, but Hurley was not there. She called him a second time, but his cell phone seemed to be out of battery. Mahoney said she drove around for an hour before returning home, thinking Hurley got another ride, and that when she got back, Hurley was still gone. She then reported Hurley missing, and various searches were conducted. 6 days after his disappearance, Hurley's body was found in the Charles River, close to where he asked Mahoney to pick him up. Investigators said there was no sign of foul play, and his death was ruled an undetermined drowning. Hurley's mother received a copy of the autopsy report and allowed a physician to analyze the report. She found out that her son had reportedly suffered blunt force trauma to the head, his eye socket and behind his left leg. GHB was also found in his system along with alcohol. A smiley face was found painted near the river. Number 6. Brian Wellsine. On January 1, 2000, Northern Illinois University junior Brian Wellsine went missing from Chicago, Illinois, after a night of celebrating Y2K with his friends. The 21-year-old finance student rarely partied since he was dedicated to the university's soccer team, but he decided to have a few drinks for the new year. Wellsine's friends said he had only 3 or 4 drinks, but by the end of the night he seemed very intoxicated. Wellsine told his friends he wanted to call it a night and go back to the hotel where they were staying. One of Wellsine's friends, Nick Young, stayed behind. During the drive, Wellsine started throwing up. His friend told him to get out of the car while he parked. Various witnesses outside the hotel saw Wellsine vomiting in the street. His friends went up to their room and never saw Wellsine again. When Young came back to the hotel around 4 a.m. and realized Wellsine was not in their room, he searched the area outside the hotel. He could not find Wellsine and reported him missing around 1 p.m. After extensive searches, Wellsine's body was found 77 days later on March 17. It had been washed ashore on a beach in Gary, Indiana, 30 miles south of Chicago. Police said there were no signs of foul play, and his death was ruled an undetermined drowning. Investigators believed he could have walked to the edge of Lake Michigan, a 5-minute walk from the hotel, and fallen in. His blood alcohol concentration was only 0.08%. Police have not and will not say if a smiley face was present near the death site. Only speculation and mystery surrounds the tragic deaths of many more in like fashion, almost all bearing the smile face mark. These cases are closed and not being reinvestigated at this point. Tell us in the comments, is this the work of a killer smiley face cult? Or is this just a tragic case of drownings? Thank you for joining us here at Coffee with History. Don't forget to hit the like and subscribe button for more content. Check out another Unsolved 2022 serial killer video by hitting one of the links on your screen.